Speaking of Ohio, this is an interesting story we want to update people on and bring in an expert. But these temperature swings in the forecast have been really important watching what's gone on in Ohio with the train derailment here. Because as this has happened, the temperature difference has created winds in or around this particular disaster. And that has allowed for the wind to produce toxic airborne chemicals. Now, the derailment happened about a week ago, but we've seen growing concern about not just the air and how the wind is impacting this, but also soil and water contaminants across the region here. People are now complaining of headaches, feeling sick. And this is a situation where Ohio's Department of Natural Resources estimates 3,500 fish were killed.
Amy, this is a situation where it is going to affect so many different people. The public health professor, Barr, joins us now. Winds are howling in East Palestine. That's right. Again, in the Ohio River Valley area, we have wind gusts over 40 miles per hour. Talk to us a little bit about the influence of those winds in the wake of this disaster.
Yeah, the wind direction can really affect the plumes of chemicals and how they move and what direction they go into, what communities they affect. It definitely has an impact on trying to get some of those chemicals up from the ground and moving them out of the way or moving them into other communities where they can potentially be dangerous as well.
I mean, it's been making headlines here. Some of the folks there locally are sharing pictures of dead animals, dead fish, frogs there in the local streams. What does that say here about the multitude of impacts you could be dealing with across the board, from health concerns of humans to potential wildlife ecology impact?
Right. Well, these chemicals are very toxic chemicals. They're carcinogenic. They are teratogenic, meaning that they cause harm to fetuses. You can see an immediate impact with animals and wildlife being killed. What will be interesting to me is to see the long-term impact in the area. I mean, right now, the EPA and other authorities are doing all they can to get rid of the chemicals through controlled burning, but that's producing a lot of particulate matter and other toxic fumes, as you mentioned before. I think the idea is if they can contain it well and keep monitoring it over time, they can reduce the impact on the community and the wildlife. But this is a huge spill. And so the ability to contain it's going to be very, very difficult.
Yes, it will be. And boy, that is a community that I'm very familiar with. I've driven through East Palestine on my way to Pittsburgh several times. What I'm curious about, though, is the complex environmental disaster that is this is obviously going to require remediation and a long-term survey. My question is there anything that stands out that is going to be important in the research element to all of this?
Yeah, I think it's really important that people get there and try and understand if there are any health outcomes that are being associated with some of these exposures. I think there needs to be repeated monitoring of the area, not just ecologically, but also human monitoring of it. There needs to be some sort of registry where people can log any health complaints they have. I think this is going to be an area that's going to be researched for a long period of time, and we really don't know the long-term impact on the community.
We appreciate your insight and the time here on Fox Weather. Public health professor Dr. Dana Barr. I'm Amy Freeze. Welcome to Fox Weather's YouTube page. We have more great videos on the way, so make sure to subscribe to stay updated on all things weather.